Our last stop here on the table adventure is the ability to use tables that are linked to external data. So the data is not stored in Excel, but you can see it in Excel, you can filter it, you can manipulate it, but obviously you can't make any changes to the raw data underneath the table. That's great, you're protecting the data, but you're allowing yourself or other people to then run filters, sorting, etc. on that data. So let's take the external data working file. It's actually blank, but we're going to link it to two external data sources. And the steps to doing this are to go to the data ribbon, get external data, and in the pop-down, you'll see there's a variety of default choices. So we've got from Access, or Microsoft Access, from the web. Now that works if the web page you're linking to actually is formatted correctly. So it's not a brilliant solution, but it does work. From a plain text file, so it may be a CSV file. From other sources, and there's a drop-down of quite a few choices here. SQL Server, Analysis Services, Windows Azure Marketplace, OData Data Feed, XML Data Import, Data Connection Wizard from Microsoft Query, or it may be you've already created one of these connections previously, and therefore it will be listed under Existing Connections. We don't, so we're going to go through the stages. First one is from Access. There is an Access database within your working folder called Employees. The first step is to navigate to that Access database and then open. From the database, we then get a selection of the tables and the queries that we would like to link to. I'm going to go with TBL Employees, so that's all the employees' data. Okay, how would you like to see that displayed in Excel? And although there are a number of choices, if we go with Table, we actually see the data. If you go with Pivot Table or Pivot Chart, you see a summary of the data. You don't actually see the data underlying, whereas with a table, we will get to see the whole data. So I'd like to go with the table, place it in the existing worksheet starting A1, it's a sensible location to start, and then OK. The data is then pulled in, and we have 99 records of the employees' data from the Access table. Now, although you can make changes here effectively that look like changes, like deleting things, you're not actually changing the underlying data source, and at any stage on your Table Tools ribbon, you can refresh the data. So I click the refresh button, and that data that I thought I'd deleted actually comes running back from the Access database. So we have what is really a one-way connection. We can see the data, we can filter data, we can hide columns, we can change the order of columns, but every time you then ask it to go have a look at the Access database to update itself, any changes you've made to the data are then overridden with the actual data that hasn't been changed. But it's great because it safeguards that data, giving you the tools to then manipulate what you see in the table with all the table tools we've just done. So the filtering, the sorting, the changing of the styles, the total rows, all those kind of things you can add to this table. The data is not stored in Excel, it's stored in an external data source, in fact, in the Access database. Now that's one example. When you do create a connection, you effectively create the connection as well. And we'll see on the data ribbon, connections, there's your employees connection. And if we check the properties, we've got a few options in here for enabling background refresh or refresh every so many minutes. Refresh the data when opening the file. So every time you open this Excel file, this table would refresh itself based on the latest information in the Access table. That's quite a good little option. Okay, let's go to sample 2. In sample 2, we're going to make a connection a little further afield. So it's not to an Access database that is located a little bit further across on the hard drive. We're going to connect from another source from a SQL server that is actually located out on the internet. Now, unfortunately, this isn't a connection that you will be able to carry out, but you'll be able to see what I do. And if you do have access to a SQL Server database, then you'll be able to do the same thing. So we need to know the server name. We also need a login, which we didn't need for the Access. The login is pretty secure. You need to know your username and password. If they're correct, you'll then be connected to the SQL Server, wherever it might be located, in the cloud, on your internal network, even on the same machine. And dependent on the login permissions you're using, you'll then get access to a number of databases and a number of data objects within those databases. We have quite a high permission, so we can choose the database we want to connect to, and then choose the data object that contains the data we want to place in our table. Next. What will then be saved on your machine is an ODC file. You can call it something sensible. Mine's been called the SQL Server name and the view name. I'm going to call it shop data. You could, if you're sure no one else will have access to the file, save the password in the file, but it is a little dangerous, and then finish. Where do I want to place the data? Well, it's the same as access now. In a table in A1 of this sheet, please. OK, and then that pulls through your data. Exactly the same as the access connection. You're effectively one-way traffic. You are seeing the data, and totally regardless of the fact that you can appear to delete data and records, as soon as you refresh, it will pull in the latest information from the external database, in this case, SQL Server. But apart from that, you can do everything that you can do with tables that are based on Excel data.